Now, before the interview starts, I'd like to give a big shout out to Karting Armchair Experts. They're a brilliant group on Facebook and it's a lovely community, very knowledgeable too. If you like go-karting, go find them on Facebook and join the group. It's absolutely brilliant. Also, they've got merchandise out, as you can see here. You can pick from all sorts of different colours. The quality is brilliant and the icing on the cake is you can have it personalised like I've had here with my surname Hedge. So make sure you go find Karting Armchair Experts on Facebook. Welcome British Touring Car star Tom Oliphant. Thank you very much for coming on and getting involved. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, dealing with lockdown quite well. Just spending a lot of time in my apartment. Working from home. But yeah, no, doing well.
As much as you can, I guess, work from home as a racing driver. I guess lots of sponsors to find, keeping fitness up. I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. But actually, I run another company called Next Level Motorsport, which helps drivers with their sponsorship, marketing materials, and also with PR and things like that around race weekends. So what we're able to do with that is obviously speak to new clients. People are still announcing their race seasons now. So I'm spending my time sort of trying to build our client base for that. And then, yes, of course, with racing, it's all about talking to sponsors, trying to find the budget for next year in 2022. So it's really difficult at the moment, but, there's some strong conversations happening for 2022 and future beyond that. So I think things will get back to normal soon.
Absolutely. We've got lots to look forward to with racing and, of course, British touring cars coming back.
Exactly.
And where did you get into motorsport? How did you get into motorsport?
So I started racing when I joined high school in Tarpley, which is about 2 or 3 miles away from Alton Park. So they had a karting team. They raced in a school's karting championship called NATSCA. And really, before that, I was just interested in kind of when we went on holiday, going in the go-karts and stuff like that. So, it was a big step up. And that's where I started, which is a bit unusual. I think there's only sort of 1 or 2 other racing drivers who are racing at the moment who've come from that route. But it was brilliant for me because it gave me a really easy starting sort of block that I could push off and then start racing across sort of England and Europe in karting. So it was brilliant being near Alton Park. My house, I can hear the cars from Alton Park when they're going around as well, which is really nice. So it was a special time, and I'm forever grateful to everybody in NATSCA and Tarpley karting team who helped me start my journey.
Yeah, that's really cool. Were you a fan of British touring cars, and was it something you wanted to do in the future?
Being completely honest, I haven't really watched motorsport until I was about 18. I was a kid who really liked doing stuff, so I didn't watch football, didn't watch cricket or golf or motorsport really, unless my dad was watching it. So my big passion for motorsport came from driving go-karts and just being, it was so freeing. It was something that I was good at quite quickly, and it separated me from other people. So that really drove it on. But yeah, it's growing up near Alton Park because obviously there's a lot of motorsport around me. But, my biggest memory of touring cars early on was when I was about 8. My dad went to Alton Park and watched Rickard Rydell in his Volvo. And he queued up for a good hour to get me his signature and his teammates. And that stayed, up across my bedroom wall from about 8 until I left for uni, really. So that sort of, I think subconsciously always made me want to go into tin tops rather than Formula One, which was never really a dream of mine.
Was Rickard Rydell like an inspiration to you, would you say?
Yeah, I when we watched touring cars or stuff like that, I always supported him. And my biggest memory of really him wasn't really about him. It was about the early touring car game, Toka 2. And I'd always play that against my dad, and I'd be Rickard Rydell in the Volvo, and my dad would be Alan Manu in the Renault, which was always quite good fun. And, I think, early on, if you're talking about inspirations, I think, he was probably one of them for me, more so than the likes of, Senna and, people like that in Formula One.
Absolutely. And obviously we've got the British touring car game coming out soon. That's obviously going to be something to look forward to as well.
No, definitely. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know which year they're going to pick for drivers. Hopefully they pick lots of drivers from history, because I think that would be great. maybe the last 20 years of drivers with a couple of different types of cars you can drive. That would be fantastic. But fingers crossed I'm in a game. I mean, what a cool life achievement that would be. I mean, not many people can say they're in a computer game. And, my friends are really supportive of what I do. And, we all play on the Xbox during lockdown, and they're really looking forward to being able to play as me against me, even though most of my friends will probably pick Colin Turkington to be just to wind me.
That is brilliant. So obviously, you before British Touring Cars, you raced in lots of different championships. From Ginetta's obviously won the Ginetta Championship in 2015. Obviously, Porsche Carrera Cup. What's been your favourite, and what other stuff have you done?
Oh well, I'd say my favourite is probably racing the BMW in touring cars at the moment. I obviously had an incredibly successful season in 2015 when I won the Ginetta Super Cup Championship, and that was a real special moment for me, being able to say I've won a British Championship. Porsche was really good fun. I found it a little bit challenging in England because the tracks are quite small for the pace of the car. But when I raced in the Middle East or across Europe, the car's phenomenal. I loved the race at Le Mans. That's probably one of my racing highlights. I've raced a lot of stuff. I'd say I prefer touring cars because I like the racing. I like the fact that you can rub and, race really close. The cars aren't aerodynamically based, so you can follow really closely. And that's really good fun. I'd say that. So I'd say that I think my fondest memories are in touring cars. A little soft spot for the Ginetta Super Cup car. I think that's a phenomenal piece of kit, and I love coaching in it. And hopefully I'll be able to coach a little bit this year with some of our clients. And then, not a big fan of single-seaters or really GTs. I didn't like my head being out of the car in single-seaters, and I didn't like, having to share a car, even though I had 2 really good fun years with Rick Parfitt Jr. I just prefer to just be me. Then nothing can go wrong unless it's my fault.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And if I were to ever race, I wouldn't ever go down the single seaters. It's expensive as well. I think it's a lot more expensive.
Very expensive. I raced in Formula Bark Renault, which was quite a lot cheaper than Formula 4 at the moment. But again, there wasn't a clear route out of it. But some decent drivers came through it when I was racing. Mike Epps, Seb Morris, Kieran Vernon, a lot of drivers that are now either driving for manufacturers or coaching high level. It was a great series, and it really taught me a lot, especially about aerodynamics, but I just wasn't suited for it.
Absolutely. Well, obviously 2018 you came into British Touring Cars with Sicily Motorsport. How did that deal come about? How did that get started?
So I think I had a choice after 2 years in Porsche where to go, and my choices were either race Porsche Super Cup full time, but to do that, there's not a lot of racing and a lot of travel. So you'd have to partner it with either the German Carrera Cup Series or England. And when looking at that, the price for that was, £450,000. So that's quite expensive. And then, there's a lot of traveling. Although it's cool, it's quite difficult to get people into the circuit. Sponsors would have been hard to find. So I decided to go touring cars for a couple of reasons. I had quite good links with WSR, and I was speaking to WSR in 2018 or 2017 to see whether there would be a seat available for me to go.
Really?
I was managed by Andy Prio at the time, and he was obviously had good links with BMW and WSR. So we tried that route, and then Rob Collard decided to return, which meant I didn't have a seat. So I sort of looked around. I spoke to Speedworks. I spoke to a couple of teams. But Sicily were the one team who had a car and had a license available to them that they could get, and that were really keen to do it. So I decided that if I'm going to do touring cars, it's a good thing to learn front-wheel drive. And, Adam Morgan and me, A-Class, have done really well in the previous years. So, I put my faith with them and, gave it a good crack. It took me half a year to learn the nuances of racing front-wheel drive, but I feel like by the end of the season, I was challenging Aidan and Adam for pace, and I really enjoyed it. I'd be happy to go back to front-wheel drive in the future if that's where my career takes me.
Absolutely. And obviously, how would you say your first season went? Obviously, you briefly mentioned it was difficult at first because you've got to get used to front wheel drive. But
Exactly, it was a challenge, but you know, you don't make many friends racing touring cars. I think in my first couple of rounds, I treated people as they treated me, elbows out fashion, and that upset a few people. I was obviously a little bit quicker than a few people wanted me to be as well throughout the year, so that didn't go down too well. So I ended up having quite a few run-ins with one or two drivers out of them wanting to hit me or them purely not having the talent to stop hitting me. But you know, that's sort of part of racing, and you have to get through that. Obviously, being a new boy in the championship in a half decent car, you know, I'm gonna run into those problems, and everybody does. But you know, it was really good fun, and the team were really, you know, kind and nurturing, and you know what, like my engineers at the time worked really hard to get me used to the car, and I feel like I did a good job. You know, do I prefer front wheel drive to rear wheel drive? Probably not. I think I'm more suited to rear wheel drive. That's my natural driving style. But you know, I feel like I could jump in a front wheel drive car and, you know, challenge for race wins just like I'm in rear.
absolutely. And was it how you imagined it, British touring cars?
It delivered everything I expected, and maybe a little bit more, really. I mean, it was such good fun and such a great learning curve. And you know what? I loved the fan attention. It was really good fun. My first ever signature signing session was amazing. And, you know, just all of the attention, the media. When you're racing, all the crowd is watching your race, whereas in the support series, some of the crowd aren't. So you really get a big sense that, you know, you feel like a racing driver, and that's amazing. It's why we do it, really, at the end of the day. But you know, it also came with big challenges. I didn't expect it to be so hard to finish in the top 10, let alone get a podium or anything like that. And, you know, I learned very quickly that those chances come along very rarely. And you have to take them with you know, both hands, really, and put a lot on the line. So, but it's great fun. I love the fact that, you know, the weight, the different tyres, you know, the cars are different. It adds a lot of dimensions, and no races, you're either defending or attacking every lap, which there's no real boring races, I'd argue, other than maybe Thruxton, where everybody just drives around in a line. So yeah, I love it. It's definitely the most fun I've had.
Absolutely. Well, 2019, you moved to Wesso Racing, Team BMW. How did that deal come about?
So obviously I was sort of speaking to and getting to know them with Andy Prio's help. You know, we were having the same conversations as the year before. And yeah, I put my hat in the ring, and between WSR and Rob, they decided to take me, and Rob went elsewhere. I don't know what happened there, but WSR obviously just told me I could have the drive. So, you know, I had conversations with a few teams, but if WSR come calling, you really don't say no. I also had a few sponsors that are still with me who, you know, wanted to do business with BMW, and this was sort of the way in. So everything just lined up, and yeah, I wanted to be in the best team with the best car, with the best teammates. And obviously I signed an NDA, and they told me they were producing the 3 Series, and that was an obvious choice. I mean, you know, that car is perfectly balanced and an amazing car to drive. And, you know, all we've had since we've started building it is BOP restrictions added to it, and it's still one of the best cars on the grid. So, you know, it just proves how well it was built. And yeah, I mean, you know, any team run by Dick Bennett's is one you want to drive for. I don't think anybody up and down the grid would disagree, because, you know, I'm now on the list of drivers like Ayrton Senna and Mika Hakkinen and Barrichello and all those amazing famous drivers that have driven for him. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and you obviously mentioned the new BMW 3 Series, which came in 2019 with you. When did you find out that Wesso would be running that car?
When I went to sign the contract. So, you know, I was actually in Venice with my girlfriend, waiting for the call, and we were in a bar eating tapas and drinking some wine, and he called me, and then we celebrated, and I got off the plane, and my dad met me in Heathrow and went straight to West Surrey to sign the deal. So that was the moment they told us. You know, nobody even knew their new 3 series was coming out in the UK at that moment. So that was really quite special. And then obviously I had to keep it a secret. I saw it getting built, which was amazing. And yeah, the way they designed it, you know, right from the ground up, it was stunning to watch. All designed on CAD, all calculated to be everything that Dick Bennett wants a race car to be. And you know, that's quite a special feat. And honestly, it came together really well, but really late. It was a late call by BMW, it was a late call by WSR, and you know, the guys were working 24-hour shifts, and we got the cars the media day. My car was built at 4 a.m. and finished on media day. So incredible. It was crazy, but it worked straight out of the box. So can't complain.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant car. Obviously, like you mentioned, Dick Bennett's a proper legend, as well as your 2 teammates. Do you think they helped you when you were joining? And I guess it was quite daunting to start with, maybe as well.
No, definitely. I mean, the first question I asked Dick when I went to sign the contract is, has Colin and AJ signed as well? Because my theory is, you know, if you're going to have teammates, they might as well be the best on the grid, because then you have all the data, you have all the knowledge, you get to talk to them and learn from them. And if you're beating them in the same equipment, then arguably you could say you're as good, or if not better than them. So I wanted to be Colin's teammate and AJ's, and they taught me a lot. That first year, you know, was hard for me, but they were kind and they spoke to me, and obviously we all share each other's data. And I felt like, because I wasn't necessarily in a title fight all season, I was able to try different setups. And in the end, they were running my setup to ultimately come first and second in the championship. So I felt like I sort of helped the team in some way. But yeah, I mean, both of them are good friends of mine now and brilliant racing drivers, you know, and you know, I'm still working hard to try and be as good as them.
Absolutely. And it's cool to hear. Obviously, you with West Surrey, it was a manufacturer team. This probably sounds like a bit of a silly question. Is there a big difference when you're signing a contract with a manufacturer team to an independent team, say like Sicily Motorsport?
Definitely. You know, obviously the contracts are both quite, you know, complex. But when you sign a manufacturer deal, you know, you're not just signing with West Surrey, you're signing with BMW. So, you know, when I agreed to race for BMW, for WSR, they took me to BMW, and I met Graham Greaves and Michelle, the marketing director. And, you know, that's quite a daunting concept. And they asked me a lot of questions, grilled me quite a lot, and I came out of it, and, you know, they approved me. You know, I've ended up being really good friends with them since, but, you know, you have to sign a deal with BMW. You get certain benefits for that. I get to, you know, drive really nice BMWs around, and I get to do amazing drive days for them. But, you know, that's all contracted. And then, you know, the sponsorship between what I bring and what they deliver, you know, has to match. So I can't have any sponsors that clash with their sponsors or with their branding. So it gets quite complex, but, you know, everybody's really friendly and everybody's very keen to work together. So it really isn't a problem.
Yeah, it's good to hear. And obviously you're driving one of the best cars on the grid, in my opinion. We've all seen that. How did that compare to the front-wheel drive Mercedes A-Class?
Oh, it's really hard to compare because one's front and one's rear. I mean, the fundamental of driving it are very different. But obviously I went from a car which was near the end of its life. Obviously they bought BMWs this year. So, you know, that car was edging towards the end of its life, and they were really getting the maximum out of it because new technology was coming forward, new cars were being built. You know, it was hard to keep up. I felt like my year was probably one of the last years. It was really a true front running car. And then to go to a brand new car, it's a massive step, but the way they approach it is different, you know, and it's a lot more serious, but there was a lot more pressure on me, you know, because AJ and Colin were doing really well with the car straight off the bat. So I was not only having to learn a new team, a new crew, a new car, you know, and only my second year in the championship, I was having to go up and, you know, be compared against those two. So, you know, not easy at all. But I felt like towards the end of the year, you know, I was quick. And then, you know, the next year I certainly was, you know, a lot closer to Colin and in certain situations better. So, it's just a massive learning curve. It would be impossible for me to compare the two truly, because they're just worlds apart in experiences. But yeah, you just have to do the best with what you've got. So yeah.
Absolutely, and obviously, like you said, the BMW 3 Series was a new car. How much involvement as a driver would you have in developing it?
So I had very little involvement really. I signed the contract and then they were building it. So I feel like Colin, when you're a racing driver, you make notes and talk to your engineers about every race. And obviously AJ, Colin, Rob, and everybody that came before, Jack Goff, Andy Prio, had all given their feedback on the 1 Series. So the 3 Series was built based on that, based on making its flaws a strength. And, and I kind of jumped into it. Obviously, I've got an engineering degree. I understood what they were doing and it was fascinating. And they were building it in the right way. I knew that, but I didn't have much impact. In terms of development from that moment, I have had an equal, part in it with Colin and AJ and then just Colin last year. Our feedback is always very similar. Although we run slightly different setups, the fundamentals of the car are similar. So we're always working towards that goal. So it was fascinating. I love that side of it. And that's a big part of my enjoyment this year, is seeing my feedback kind of develop into actual real life changes and then feeling that change, in the driving.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you and Team BMW and Colin and everyone else that's helped have done a great job with it.
Thank you. Yeah.
So obviously 2020, it was a very difficult year for everyone. However, I feel you made a massive step up. You got your first win. How would you say your 2020 season went?
Yeah, so obviously, this time last year, I was all pumped, ready for the season. And then, everything in the world just stopped. So it was challenging. I mean, we didn't even know we'd have a season. So the fact that, credit where credit's due, BTCC, Touring Cars, Alan Gow, all the organisers, ITV with the filming, and everybody worked tirelessly to get us 9 rounds, which was amazing. It was tough on all the teams, but we got it done. But yeah, midway through lockdown, I heard that AJ wasn't going to be racing anymore, which took us down to a 2-car team potentially. And then that put a lot of weight on my shoulders to perform so that Team BMW could win the manufacturers again and, the team's championship. So again, there was a lot of, a lot of different things that I had to sort of develop and improve myself to kind of reach that potential. So, I'd say the lockdown did me good though. I felt very refreshed. As a racing driver, you never really stop. The off season's busier than the race season a lot of the time, and that's really tough. So to have nothing to do for 3 months was a real weight off my shoulders, and I came back really fired up for it. I felt really good, and I definitely drove differently. My mindset going into the season was I want to drive the car more like AJ in qualifying, more on the edge, more natural, just taking more risks. Because his car control is effortless, and it's one of my strengths as well. So I just needed to take that step forward, and then treat the championship a bit more like Colin does, which is manage it, take what you can get when you can, don't take too many risks. So yeah, I felt like I did a really good job early on. A couple of podiums at Donington. Obviously, my win at Brands was fantastic, and after the first race of being fired off on the first lap was I didn't think that would come. Holding off Ash Sutton was very tough. He's not the driver you want behind you when you're going to try and win your first race. But the first 4 rounds went really well, and then just really terrible luck after that. And in the bad places, just don't know. Race 1 just never went my way really this year. So either a mechanical failure like Silverstone, or being accidentally driven into like Snetterton by Aidan when his throttle stuck open on the first corner. I was just always in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I made a massive improvement, and obviously we won the titles, which was great. Colin came second, which was a shame. But ultimately, I made big improvements, and I'm looking to build on that this year.
Absolutely. And obviously, first win at Brands Hatch. Talk me through that. That must have been amazing, but very stressful at the same time as well.
Yeah. No, well, I went into the race and we'd had, because it was so hot, we were starting our tyre pressures incredibly low going into qualifying, and I actually rippled my tyres, which means you damage the wall of the tyre and then you can't use them again. So I actually went into the final race at Brands on race tyres that I'd done in my first 2 races, so significantly older than most other people. Starting 6th wasn't a great, reverse grid for me. I didn't really have any plans for it. I just thought, you know what, try and get a top 5 and we'll go home happy. First, I obviously got into 3rd on the start, and then we managed to drive around the outside of Aiden and Jelly, down the start-finish line, and that was, a really opportunistic move. I knew I had a good straight line speed versus Stephen, and just kind of took advantage of that. And then, 3rd lap in, Sutton's right behind me, so I remember going over radio and asking if it's Sutton or Aiden, because the car looked slightly different. So, yeah. And then it was just a matter of, I'm not a big fan in defending. If you defend, you give them opportunities. The way to truly defend from somebody is to, just drive the racing line, but cover areas where you're going to be weak. So I quickly found out he was mega quick on the Indy track, and yet I was slightly quicker on the international track. GP track. So all I knew is I needed to cover Druids and then basically Surtees, which is a fourth corner. And if he didn't get past me there, he wasn't going to get past me out the back. So, I just monitored the mirrors at those situations and, drove smart. And in full fairness to Sutton and Ash, he never gave me a tap. He never tapped me, he never hit me. I think the worst I got was a bit of mid-corner rubbing around Druids, but in his defence, I was incredibly slow on purpose. So he drove fantastically, and he gave me massive credit afterwards. I mean, he absolutely threw everything at trying to get past me, and he just couldn't. So, that really meant a lot. And I think the way I won my first race kind of announced that I am a driver that can drive right at the front. I finished 6th in the championship, which isn't as good as I kind of wanted after that. Being as high as 3rd and running quite close to first 2, but bad luck meant that just didn't happen. But I think I got a lot of respect that day. All the drivers who are running at the front definitely sort of changed their sort of driving around me, gave me a little bit more respect, a little bit more room. It's a subtle change, but if you're one of the top drivers, you tend to get people don't do silly things around you, and so it made a big difference. It was the best achievement of my career, I would say. Takes a lot to win a touring car race. Absolutely.
And I think everyone was just so happy to be there as well, because we, like you said earlier, we weren't sure if we were going to go racing at all. And I saw even more last season that everyone was, congratulating each other, and everyone was happy to be there.
No, definitely. I think, honestly, as everybody in the paddock, if it hadn't happened, the industry would have been blown to pieces this year. The fact that we were all there, I think everybody made a big effort, and there was a good atmosphere in the paddock. Obviously you've got the competitiveness, but after the media day, when it announced on the day that we weren't going to race, it just felt so different being there. And we had 4 races in 5 weeks in August, and that was just really good fun. It was a challenge, but it was good fun. It was so I think it last season was tough, and it was sad that we didn't have any fans and we didn't have any sponsors there. But overall, it happened, and that's a massive thing.
Absolutely. And you said obviously there were so many race weekends, so close together. Would you say last season was even more difficult? I know it was your best season to date in touring cars, but it must have been difficult.
Yeah, I think it was difficult in a lot of ways, but again, in another way, it was good. If you had momentum, then it was easy to carry it on. But yeah, I mean, I've never really felt any physical tiredness from racing. We're all relatively fit, but after 2 back-to-back weekends, and the problem is you hype yourself up mentally, and then you can't let yourself drop in between because there's not enough time. You just go straight into preparing for the next one. So I think, mentally, you're just so drained after August. I was knackered. And I had my 30th birthday party, and that was really just a big time off for me, relax, forget about motorsport for a week. So yeah, it was tough, but You know, I felt like everybody really gave their all, and you didn't really see any difference in the racing quality. It was still as fierce as it ever was.
Absolutely. Well, we had some great battles, a great season of racing.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so very much for coming on and getting involved. It's been great to have a chat about, touring cars, BMW. It's been a great insight as well.
No, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you soon.
Perfect. Cheers.
Bye.